Walk into the British Museum or the Ethnological Museum in Berlin, and you will meet them. They stare back at you with calm, bronze eyes, masterpieces of human history. But these aren't just statues, they are crime scenes. Every single piece represents a life lost, a palace burned, and a civilization decoupled from its soul. This is the story of how the great city of Benin was almost erased in 1897. To understand the depth of this tragedy, you must first witness the height of its beauty. Long before 1897, the Kingdom of Benin was one of the most powerful and sophisticated capitals in pre-colonial West Africa. European travelers in the 17th century stood in awe. They wrote of streets as wide as those in Amsterdam, lit by palm oil lamps. They saw moats and ramparts that stretched for thousands of kilometers, a vast network of earthworks that some modern researchers have compared to the Great Wall of China in its sheer scale. And at the center was the Oba. He was not just a king, he was divine, the spiritual anchor of the Edo people. The bronze plaques on his palace walls were not just art. They were the historical archives of a nation, written in metal. For centuries, Europeans had come to Benin above all as traders, buying ivory, pepper, textiles, and later palm oil along the coast. By the late 19th century, that uneasy relationship had shifted from trade to open tension. The British Empire no longer saw Benin as a civilization to understand, but as an obstacle standing in the way of its plans. In the logic of empire, trade routes and profit margins mattered more than the meaning of a city or the spiritual weight of its bronzes. James Phillips, the acting consul general, was driven by a singular goal: to depose the Oba and open Benin's vast resources to British trade. He even wrote to London, explicitly stating that the ivory and palm oil found in the city would more than pay for the cost of removing the king. Oba Ovonramwen was an obstacle. He controlled the trade. He taxed the merchants. To the British, the Oba was a tyrant who stood in the way of global commerce. They called him a barbarian to justify removing him. They wanted free trade, which really meant British trade. In January 1897, acting consul James Phillips insisted on an immediate audience with the Oba. He set out with an expedition of over 250 men, ignoring warnings that the timing was catastrophic. The kingdom was in the midst of Agu, a sacred festival of spiritual purification. For the Oba, seeing a foreigner during this time was not just a breach of protocol, it was a violation of the nation's soul. Despite desperate pleas from Benin messengers to wait just 2 days, Phillips continued his march. Driven by imperial arrogance, he violated the kingdom's holiest traditions. Fearful of an imminent invasion, a group of Benin generals, acting against the Oba's direct orders to avoid violence, struck first. The ambush was swift and bloody. Nearly the entire expedition was wiped out. Among the dead were 7 high-ranking British officials, including Phillips himself. Only 2 white officers survived, escaping into the jungle to tell the story through their own lens. It was these deaths that became the perfect pretext for the British Empire to unleash an unstoppable fury. The British response was not a single battle. It was a devastating military campaign. They called it the Punitive Expedition. It was launched within a month, with around 1,200 troops armed with Maxim machine guns and field artillery. Imagine standing with a spear to defend your home. while the enemy rains death from a distance using weapons you've never seen. The British moved with a scorched earth policy. They shelled and burned many villages along the road to Benin City, leaving a trail of ruins behind them. On February 18th, Benin City fell. The great walls were blasted open. The palace, which had stood for centuries, was looted and then set ablaze. The smoke was so thick it blotted out the sun, but the cruelty did not end with the flames. Oba Ovonramwen, the god-king of Benin, was captured, put in chains and exiled to a distant town, forced to live out his days in humiliation. And even then, the final insult was the theft. Thousands of royal and sacred objects, from bronze plaques to carved ivory, were stripped from the palace and packed into crates, destined for foreign museums or to be sold across the globe. To offset the costs of the expedition, the British authorities collected thousands of Benin's royal and ritual objects. Estimates suggest upwards of 3,000 pieces, which were then auctioned or distributed to museums across the West. They weren't just taking treasure, they were taking the visual soul of the Benin Kingdom, holding the memory of its ancestors an ocean away. The history books of a nation were in effect packed into crates, auctioned in London, and scattered across the Western world. Today, if you are from Benin City, you must travel to London, Berlin, or New York to see the face of your grandfather. Even now, the Benin bronzes remain the world's most debated artifacts. While some institutions have begun the process of repatriation, thousands more remain locked behind glass, labeled as global heritage by the very nations that took them. For the people of Benin, this history is not over. It is a living wound, waiting for its soul to return. But history is no longer a closed book. The tide is turning. After more than a century in exile, the spirits of Benin are finally beginning their journey home. From the universities of Aberdeen and Cambridge to the National Museums of Germany, the crates are being packed once more, not for auction, but for restitution. In 2022, Germany made history by returning over 1,000 bronzes. France and the United States have followed suit, and the momentum is unstoppable. In June 2025, the Netherlands officially handed over 119 more treasures in a historic ceremony in Lagos, Nigeria. This is more than a gesture. It is a global acknowledgement that what was taken as spoils of war must belong to the hands that created it. The void left in 1897 is starting to heal. Because these are not just artifacts, they are the heart of a culture, the records of a kingdom, and the faces of a people. After a long silence an ocean away, the ancestors are finally hearing the drums of Benin City once again. The fires of 1897 may have consumed a kingdom of wood and mud, but the spirit of Benin was cast in bronze, and bronze does not burn. It waits. Over 3,000 artifacts were taken. Thousands remain in exile. The journey home has just begun. Should all stolen artifacts be returned to their origins? Share your thoughts below. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more journeys into forgotten history.